It is time for our Week 5 college football Saturday selections. We're going to jump right into things with a noon Eastern kickoff over on ABC as the Northwestern Wildcats travel to Madison to take on the Wisconsin Badgers, who are a 24.5-point home favorite. Well, Northwestern was able to beat Wisconsin last year in Evanston by 2 touchdowns. And if you remember back in the early to middle part of this decade, we had a lot of wacky results when these two teams played. You had those good Wisconsin teams that just couldn't get around a pesky Pat Fitzgerald coached Northwestern team. So while I am a bit worried about that for this football game, what you see in what these two teams have done so far this season is you see a Northwestern team that has been horrible offensively to start the year. And unless they have their breakthrough game against an absolutely terrific Wisconsin defense, I just think that Northwestern's defense will wear down as the game goes on. So I'm going to go with Wisconsin over the Wildcats, 38-10 on Saturday. Another matchup on this Saturday of college football. It's a 3:30 Eastern kickoff. This one's on the Big Ten Network as Indiana travels to East Lansing to take on the Michigan State Spartans, who are a 14-point home favorite. Michigan State was able to beat Indiana by 2 touchdowns last year in Bloomington. So while I do have questions about this Michigan State offense still, what I take away from this game is if Indiana is starting their backup quarterback Peyton Ramsey, who's gotten to start the last couple of weeks, I'm just not sure Indiana is going to be able to score on this phenomenal Michigan State defense, especially passing the football. If that's the case, I just think Michigan State's offense gets too many chances and that they'll finish just enough drives to win this game by a score of 27-10. Another 3:30 Eastern kickoff. This one's over on CBS as you have the Alabama Crimson Tide, a 37.5-point home favorite over the Ole Miss Rebels. I normally don't like to cover games with the spreads this wide, but it was kind of a lackluster Week 5 slate of games to choose from. So this game kind of works its way into the mix. I think the big question here is will Alabama cover, not if they'll win. I feel like that's a foregone conclusion that they're going to win this football game. For me, this comes down to the fact that Alabama under Nick Saban lost those 2 games to Ole Miss back earlier this decade, and it feels like he kind of remembers that. He's hung 60 or more points on Ole Miss the last 2 seasons. I think he leaves the starters in just a little bit longer than usual because of what Ole Miss did to him back when Hugh Freeze was head coach. So I'm going Alabama at home big. I like the Tide 59-10 in this one. Another 3:30 Eastern kickoff. This one's over on NBC. You have the Virginia Cavaliers traveling to South Bend, Indiana to take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who are a 12.5-point home favorite. Well, Notre Dame's coming off that physical and emotional loss in Athens, Georgia last Saturday, so I kind of worry if they're going to come out sluggish in this football game to start. And that's something they can't afford going up against a Virginia team that while they didn't look great against Old Dominion last Saturday, I've kind of chalked that up to them looking ahead to this game. Because this game against Notre Dame is quite frankly perhaps the biggest game in their program's recent history. For this game and Notre Dame to win, they're going to have to be able to run the football. The Irish didn't look great running against Georgia, and this Virginia run defense, while they're not Georgia in terms of talent, they've been very strong against the run to start this season, so it's not going to be any easier for Notre Dame. For Virginia, they're going to have to run the football as well. Didn't look great the last couple weeks running, but I think they come out in this game with a clear game plan. You know Bronco Mendenhall has a clear identity for his team. So I like Virginia to hang around in this game. I think it's a great battle. I think it's 20-20 late, and Ian Book leads the Irish on a drive that results in a game-winning field goal. I'm going Notre Dame at home, 23-20, but this should be a real fun one to watch. Another 3:30 Eastern kickoff. This one's over on Fox. You have the USC Trojans traveling to the Pacific Northwest to take on a Washington Huskies team that's a 12.5-point home favorite. Well, USC's coming off of that emotional win over Utah, and I kind of worry how this USC team will handle going on the road. They haven't won yet on the road when they've been so mistake-prone so far this season, especially in terms of turnovers, and this is going to be Matt Fink's first career start. On top of that, Washington's a team that likes to throw the ball downfield. They're going to try to take their chances with Jacob Eason's strong arm. USC is down 1 starting corner in Elijah Griffin, and the starting safety, Talanoa Hufanga, who's been perhaps one of the biggest stars of this team so far in this season. For those reasons, I have to pick Washington. But this USC team, nothing that they do would surprise me. They've been phenomenal when their back's been up against the wall, and they absolutely have the talent to come out and win this football game. But because of those injuries for USC, and because I haven't yet seen them go on the road and win a game they're not supposed to, I have to go with Washington. So I'm going with the Huskies at home by a score of 34-20 over the Trojans. A big game in primetime. It's a 7 Eastern kickoff over on ESPN. The Mississippi State Bulldogs head to take on the Auburn Tigers, who are a 10-point home favorite for this SEC West collision. Well, Mississippi State beat Auburn last year, and that helps me pick Auburn in this game because last week Auburn played a good Texas A&M team, and next week they have a Florida team, and they're going on the road for that game. It's going to be a big game. It's the 3:30 SEC CBS game. So because Mississippi State beat Auburn last year pretty handedly, I think they have Auburn's full attention in this game. So I'm not quite worried about the elements of this game being a trap game. That said, Auburn's offense hasn't been great so far this season, but their defensive line has been absolutely terrific. So what I think happens is you get an Auburn team, this kind of a close game for a while, but Auburn puts it away in the fourth quarter. I'm going Auburn at home, 26-13 over the Bulldogs. Another primetime matchup, this one at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus, of all places. It's the Kansas State Wildcats going on the road to Stillwater to take on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, who are a 4.5-point home favorite. Well, this game for me comes down to the fact that Kansas State beat Oklahoma State last year, but now you get an Oklahoma State offense that's a little bit more dynamic with redshirt freshman quarterback Spencer Saunders, and of course the stars at running back in Chuba Hubbard and receiver in Tylan Wallace. Oklahoma State's defense isn't great, so I think Kansas State is going to surprise people and put up some points in this game, but I just think it comes down to Oklahoma State has too much firepower offensively, so I'm going with Oklahoma State at home, 37-30. Another big game on this Saturday. It's a 10:30 Eastern kickoff over on FS1 as you have the Utah Utes, a 6-point home favorite against the Washington State Cougars. Well, Washington State had that meltdown against UCLA last Saturday night. I just wonder if any of that had to do with them looking ahead to this road game against the Utah team that at the time was considered a potential playoff contender. Of course, they lost to USC. Also for Washington State in this game, they run that air raid offense. You saw USC give Utah trouble with that type of offense last Friday, and you have a Washington State team that's won the last 2 years against Utah. They've kind of had their number a little bit. Does that lend itself to Washington State pulling a road upset? Another key in this game is Utah starting running back Zach Moss might not be able to play. That'd be a big blow considering I think Utah might be able to find some success running against Washington State. So if they're without their best running back, I think his backups are capable, but I don't quite have the same level of confidence in them. For those reasons, I'm going to pick Washington State to go on the road and pull an upset over the Utes. I like the Cougars 30-26 on Saturday night in some Pac-12 after dark. And now to the game of the weekend. The Buckeyes are significant favorites over the Nebraska Cornhuskers. 17-point favorites to be exact. It is a 7:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff over on ABC. Memorial Stadium will be a sea of red for this one. But the Buckeyes have had problems in these tricky road games the last couple of seasons. So we'll have to see what happens. For me, this game comes down to the fact that this Ohio State team is just better than those last two Ohio State teams that had the road losses, of course, to Iowa and to Purdue. This Ohio State defense is better. You have Chase Young, Jeffrey Okudah, and a host of other NFL players on that side of the ball. And true redshirt freshman quarterback Justin Fields has been terrific so far. J.K. Dobbins is starting to look like his freshman self now for Ohio State. He's a junior. He's showing that sophomore slump wasn't something permanent. For Nebraska, yes, they struggled with Illinois last week. I could kind of make a case that was because they were looking ahead to this game, because everybody has been building up this game all off season long. So perhaps that's the reason they had some issues against Illinois. They are a young team. They were on the road. Now they're back at home. It's a big game. Their focus will be there. But while I really like this Nebraska offense with Scott Frost calling the plays, Adrian Martinez at quarterback, of course, and a running game that's starting to come into its own, their defense has been bad, and they are going to have to either catch a lot of breaks in this football game or play the game of their lives for Nebraska to come out with a win. I'm not saying that can't be done because Purdue just did that last year against Ohio State in a primetime game on ABC. But coming in, this Ohio State team is better. And I just think the Buckeyes will come out of Saturday night with a big win over Nebraska. I like Ohio State on the road, but it's going to be closer than people think. Buckeyes win 37-30 on ABC.